Okay. Hello, I'm AChicken.
Hello, I'm Wolf.
And we're the founders of the Glacorian development team. If you're interested in knowing a little more about the both of us, please check out our first episode of the Q&A series where we introduce ourselves and explore why we want to share the story of the Glacorian universe with everyone.
If you're not familiar with our setting, we gave a synopsis about it in the first episode as well, and this whole series is dedicated to shedding further light on it too.
Alright, so let's get to these questions. Looks like the theme for this series of questions will be the Glacorian Shogunate government. Our first question for this month comes from Hatter Damad, who asked in the comments of episode 2 of the Q&A, and we've only just been able to get around to answering. He since joined the server. He since joined the Discord server, and we've had a great time sharing some of the content we're working on with him. He asks, what are the hardest concepts for you to flesh out so it makes sense?
So, having worked on the setting solo myself for some 7 or 8 years, there have been many times where a concept has become difficult to work in specific areas. I think there is always some kind of snag that I get caught up on in every plot point that requires no small amount of research or work to overcome. Over the course of the development of our lore together, I've had to rewrite several political events that shaped the unification of Earth specifically, since I effectively need to come to an intimate understanding of every single country's politics, history, and culture, both historically and contemporary, in order to do justice to the people living there. Another thing I've had to rewrite was the time frame in which interstellar colonization occurred, since FTL technology was not researched until sometime after the first interstellar colony set foot. And there's certainly a lot of work that goes into correlating bits of lore and information to make sure it lines up with everything else that's already been established, such as the Cathorian Wars. I think, though, that in terms of properly fleshing things out, all of the lore for Earth already exists, so it's simply a matter of research. The truly hardest part, I'd say, is trying to do justice to the literally alien cultures of the Cathorians and the Gamolans, who are the aliens of our setting, since they'd have just as much nuance, history, and cultural formation as we humans would, but it's being narrated by two people, me and AChicken, instead of the billions of us that have come before and shaped the history of humanity.
So for me, figuring out how to make a technologically advanced alien species that abides by our mission statement of hard science fiction has been pretty difficult. So I'm referring to the Institute, Laderans. And already a lot of human technology in the setting is pushing into the realm of what's theoretically possible in contemporary times. So it's trying to find a way to make believable science fiction that's based on reality that is also not that isn't science magic. And doesn't resort to technobabble like Star Trek does, for example.
I was going to give Star Trek as an example.
So basically, Wolf and I have had lots of back and forths based on our different STEM field backgrounds, but I've joked that we might have to get multiple graduate level degrees in all 4 STEM fields just to make this work. Which I wouldn't be against. Yeah. I very much want to do that.
Actually, you mentioned the Laderans, and I recall that we had an idea for some theoretical science, really far out theoretical science, for basically phase-shifting vibration doors that they would use instead of normal doors. And then we had to veto that idea because it's actually not theoretically possible.
Yes.
And there's a really hard dynamic between the two of us of trying to figure out what theoretically possible stuff the humans would use, and how aliens, the Laderans specifically, could be even more theoretically possible and more advanced and more difficult than what the humans do.
The easiest so far has been when it's like, okay, so that's theoretically possible, humans can do it, but Laderans miniaturized it, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is neat, but that's just a case of, that's materials science, not theoretical, not mathematics science.
Yeah.
And Laderans would have advanced, a better understanding of mathematics as well.
Yeah.
Which obviously that's very difficult to represent without becoming science fantasy instead of science fiction. Regarding the sound vibration, it is possible to disassemble something, to destructively disassemble something using sound vibrations. Yeah. But as far as passing through it, like you would see in Stargate Atlantis, when sound and then so in Stargate Atlantis, there's a scene where you walk down this hallway and you can tap 3 lights and they put out a sound, and then you walk through the door into someone's secret laboratory, or walk through the wall in someone's secret laboratory.
Never watched Stargate myself.
That's not quite feasible, as far as we know. So the next thing that is difficult for me is anything that has to do with storytelling or world building that isn't a practical mechanical implementation. That is, I'm good at making general outlines of something and dropping code, but I am terrible at actually writing an enjoyable story. In fact, when it's come to the stories that we're wanting to write, I've been tasked with coming up with outlines. I'm quite good with that, of coming up with a general skeletal framework of this is what the story will be. But when it comes to like actually putting, I guess you could say, flesh on that skeleton, I make something like the Thing rather than an actual person, kind of, to put it in a metaphor.
You've so your narrative skills are phenomenal, but it's the paragraph by paragraph fleshing out of someone's I guess what's actually going on, the details, the personal perspective that you've not been able to do as of yet.
Yeah.
But your input in the story is really important and has been so far critical to the development.
Yeah, well, your input, or you're actually developing that input into something usable, is that can't be understated. That's what people look at, is the finished product of... I've heard it described by people that are salesmen or salesman adjacent, that people buy with their eyes, not anything, not with their mind. And I mean, that's true.
That's true.
So you can have a great skeletal framework, but if it's not, attractive, if it's not doesn't wear nice clothes, it's not going to be appealing.
Well, the product may be 2, but 1 is not 2 on its own.
Yes.
1 plus 1 equals 2.
Yeah.
Okay. The second question, we've already hit the 8.5 minute mark. The second question for this month is from Duckaboo, who is a long-time Discord community member and has a great mind for technical information. He asks, what is the Shogunate's current status or procedure with the interaction or discovery of other sentient races, particularly considering the negative conflicts of the past from nearly all first contacts with humanity? What would be the Shogunate's stance or thoughts to more first contacts or other powers? Would the Shogunate look to independent powers through the lens of integrating them with indifference, with hostility, or any other different views per planet or per colony even?
Alright, so this is a very good question. Duckaboo normally has very good questions. Obviously, in our setting, the most significant first contact was with the Cathorians, which sparked a 100-year war for survival that humanity eventually, by taking a huge gamble, won. technically the Gamolans were the actual first species to contact humanity, but that was a merely 12,000 or so refugees fleeing the Glacorian-led genocide of their species, and was precluded with first contact with the Glacorians by, I think, a year, something like that. So effectively, the first contact with the Gamolans might as well be bundled in there with first contact with the Glacorians as far as its cultural impact on humanity.
So, to answer the actual question, the Glacorian Shogunate has 3 protocols that they follow, roughly, when discovering other sapient life forms and other sapient nations and whatnot. The first is that peaceful neighbors are peaceful neighbors, and no kind of aggressive action should be taken against those who aren't themselves aggressive. Nations or states that enslave their own populations would be considered internally aggressive, and so while the shogunate would be hesitant to intervene, they would do any and all amount of political and cultural research they can to appreciate the exact situation going on within that country's borders before getting involved. It's important to note that aliens are aliens and not humans, so governments that work for humanity may not work for a collective of sapient aliens, or vice versa. This is something that the shogunate is always careful to appreciate. In fact, aliens necessarily being alien is why Cathorians as a species struggle so hard to integrate into the Glacorian shogunate, and it's a bit of a miracle that the Gamolans are so well suited to normal life in the shogunate.
The second protocol is that the shogunate has found a balance of regime that emphasizes the empowerment of individual citizens, where anything short of their vast and comprehensive education and liberally dispensed freedoms is viewed as short of fulfilling the potential of any sapient life form. Always with respect to the first protocol of peaceful neighbors, the Glacorian shogunate will continuously consider the benefits that might come to their neighbors if they were to join the shogunate, and so will pursue pathways to do so peacefully. If said neighbor doesn't want that, then the shogunate respects that decision. So this is the case with Ladarans and their institute. Ladarans are, for now, content to self-govern, but see within humanity an opportunity for their 2 species to form a strong symbiosis. Thus, the institute enjoys independence thanks to the first and second protocols.
The third protocol is much shorter to explain, and that is one of discovery. The Glacorian shogunate approaches all interactions and discoveries as opportunities to learn new things. Whether those things are always regime-changing or not doesn't matter. They are just happy to find out what exists in this vast universe and how things have developed. Citizens of the shogunate greatly value cultural enrichment.
All right, well, I'm sure that there's a lot of overlap with modern-day humans, too, as many... I've been to several countries, and they love hearing about places other than themselves. Not just when they find out that I'm American and tell them about the United States, but also other countries I've been to. They like to know what it was like in Iraq, for example.
Nice.
Yeah, and so what I found is there is very much of a desire by people in every country to learn more about the people in other countries and their cultures and their differences. And like even Iraqis, when I used to be conversationally good at Arabic, and I was complimented by some of our translators who they were joking, but they were saying here soon they wouldn't have a job because of me. I then forgot. I've since forgot a lot of that Arabic, but point is,
I didn't know that you spoke it.
It was it was. So point is that even that they wanted to know, the Iraqis wanted to know what it was like in the United States, and what my life was like. So they were just real enthusiastic about that.
Interesting.
But yeah, I decided to learn to speak it because I was an infantryman, and it was as much of a survival thing as if I was going to go to another country to, we'll say that the best case scenario, the ostensible reason was to help them and put up a better government for them and all that. And well, okay, I'm not going to argue that. That's will say that's true. But if that's the case, then I felt I was obligated, in a way, to learn their language and at least understand a little bit of their culture and eat some of their food. But it was also a survival thing, because if they knew that only the translator could understand them, then someone that wished us ill could talk about killing us right in front of us. And I'd heard plenty of stories from infantrymen, such as some of the drill sergeants when I was going through basic when I first joined, about how someone knowing Arabic and not telling anyone saved the lives of their unit. So that, but yeah, so there was.
It's a good skill.
Yeah, but like I said, I lost a lot of that after my deployment. I didn't reinforce it enough. Like, I had Rosetta Stone and all that, but I didn't reinforce it enough. It's easier to learn something when a pretty woman is helping you learn it.
So
that's why I know Spanish so well.
For context, yeah, Chicken can speak Spanish.
Yeah, so I speak that pretty well, and I'm married to a Spanish speaker, so like I said, it's a lot easier for a man to remember something when a pretty woman is telling him. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess this month's next question comes again from Duckaboo. How would the shogunate handle various legal systems? Would they likely acknowledge foreign powers' operations, even if it was perhaps against their principles? Or would they more likely run roughshod over any foreign local empire's authorities with, well, I have more guns and a bigger stick, so I don't care?
It's a great question. Very historically important.
Yes.
So, as previously discussed in the last question, it's in the shogunate's interest to come to appreciate the why of a foreign power's operations before jumping to conclusions, especially when they are against the shogunate's principles. Some systems are not compatible with human nature, and some systems that work for humans might not work for aliens. When it comes to non-hostile foreign operations within shogunate territory, they are expected to uphold the code of law of the shogunate, and will usually be exiled from the shogunate's territory if they fail to do so.
Foreign powers who have envoys that repeatedly offend generally just have increased surveillance. But borders are hard to enforce in the vast nebulousness of space, so that really just manifests as a designated escort. Hostile operations in shogunate territory are obviously stopped with any amount of force necessary, but are also treated with the appropriate amount of political caution.
Yeah, so that would be in order to prevent, I guess, overreaction from say, independent organizations' false flag operation. You know, it was definitely your neighbors; they definitely did it.
Yeah.
They don't want to get into a war over something that really needs to be researched first. Yeah. So that concludes the questions from our Discord members and YouTube comments for this month. But we feel that it's also important to be able to shed some light on the setting and clear up some confusion that might come up.
Yep.
So we've come up with some general questions. The first of which is, how does the mandatory military service that we've outlined is commonplace in the shogunate, how does it function? Well, that's very easily answered. Mandatorily.
Oh, okay. So, Glacorian shogunate mandatory military service functions very similarly to modern-day Nordic and Singaporean mandatory service, where quote-unquote conscripts are trained on how to protect their homes and their local areas instead of being whisked away to fight in some war elsewhere. This means that they can be employed in general policing activities or deployed in a conflict, if one were to break out locally, but they aren't normally shuttled off to other worlds to serve. After they have completed their service, they go back home with their equipment and their training to live life however they see fit.
So actually, I'm reminded, and this is probably important to share, in one of the short stories that we're planning on putting together, we outline how this conscription works. And so there's...
As well as...
It's 2 years.
I'm sorry, go on.
It's 2 years, and then the first year they get taken off planet, but they stay local to like some moon. Just
stellar system, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Just so that they're away from home and are able to be reshaped and and taught things that can't be taught in a...
So the nature of military training is typically... So the American system is especially like this, but pretty much any military system, even ones that don't involve like screaming and yelling at volunteers, that's the American system. Well, apparently, I didn't realize this, but apparently most of the rest of the world, drill sergeants are extremely quiet. They rarely move, but yet they still inspire fear.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I've seen videos of some Korean, I think it was Korean, drill instructors, and they would stand in the middle of the bay and they would say, okay, everyone is going to do this, they're going to put this here, they're going to put this at the base of my feet, and then they're going to go back to their bunk, and they're going to do this one at a time in sequence, starting there, ending there, kind of thing. And it's not just that they were obeyed, it's that they were enthusiastically and fearfully obeyed. The same as American recruits who would be getting yelled at and like getting their forehead pushed by the knife hands, that's when you use all 5 fingers to point at someone, like it's a knife.
Yep. So I heard that the drill sergeants actually aren't allowed to touch.
Not anymore.
It does happen, but they're not allowed to.
So not really. However, the difference between getting touched and not getting touched is like an eighth of an inch. So, But point is, it doesn't matter what system. When it comes to military training, typically the recruit has to be taken away from where's normal, in order to be isolated with other people that are going through the same thing, to form the unit, and also to break them down in a way that now they're ready to learn,
be reconstructed. Yeah.
And so that's the purpose of the 1 year basic, advanced, and all that training on a moon and on some training,
moon or an asteroid or something.
Within that system. It also is a perfect opportunity to give low gravity training, to recruits. Even if they never leave the planet, you could think of it as people that they may never swim in the ocean or go sailing, but they still learn how to swim.
Actually, hadn't thought of that, but that's a great point.
In fact, now that I think about it, where space travel is as accessible as it is without artificial gravity, without the magical artificial gravity that other settings has, I could see low gravity or zero gravity experiences being considered the same as most people would consider learning how to swim being an important survival skill.
Absolutely. And then the second year of their mandatory service is 2 years. The second year is local, so they go back home and they learn how to fight in the park. They learn how to protect this office building. They
learning how to fight in the park sounds like, wow, what's going on in every park here? Just want to put it out. That's more like they have nature preserves, and that they'll do training there with their neighbors that are walking around enjoying the park. Just to be clear, they're not learning to they're shooting in the park because there's fighting there.
No, so it would be with blanks and with simulated. It would be a simulated firefight, but it would be commonplace to go for a walk down to the cafe and you hear simulated gunfire up the street, and you're like, oh yeah, that's just the teenagers training,
and since
18 and 19-year-olds,
and since they would then on their second year return for the additional training at their community, and they would actually return to that community, and that's also where they would do policing, any police work they were assigned to, as well as training, is you would be like, oh yeah, that's my son Jake and his unit are out there doing that. You want to go for a picnic, kind of thing.
Yeah, we can go see him. We can go throw donuts at him while he's getting
so
getting,
it's very much
pretend shot.
So it's more like that military training would occur side by side with road construction, and it would be treated the same as both of them would be a job, kind of thing.
Yep. Absolutely. So then, related to that, we have another question about military service. How is the Glacorian Shogunate a quote-unquote democratic republic if they have mandatory conscription? How does that work?
So, for one, we answered that partly in the previous question. But for two, mandatory military service provides every citizen with the ability to defend themselves and their neighbors, and their many rights, including the right to vote. To use a phrase by Mao Zedong, not that he's a good person, but even bad people can say poignant things. Political power grows out of the barrel of a gun. This is why any free person should desire to be able to defend themselves, and any despot desires a populace that cannot defend itself.
So, I'd like to add to that, had it not been for significant interstellar and existential threats to humanity, a conscription likely wouldn't continue to have been practiced. 100 years of fighting the Cathorians, the First Creed, followed by a very slow and difficult several hundred years of integrating the Cathorian species, which now involves fighting various clans, creates a climate that makes addressing mandatory military service with the intent of ending it a very difficult, even politically suicidal prospect, because it's just really important to, I mean, just as a real world example, if you can imagine the KKK was like a country, and they were sending out spies who would pretend to be your average Joe. They would work at your job, and they would go around teaching people to hate, hate on African Americans,
and then would conduct bombing campaigns or shootouts periodically. I mean,
you would be very upset if someone said that you shouldn't learn how to protect yourself.
If someone was like, hey, you know what, let's the world's a lot safer, we don't actually need this. It's like, no, it's not. You're not on a border.
Down the road,
you're not on a world that has clan activities. You're not on a world that's predominantly Cathorian kind of thing. You're not on a frontier world where the animals are where the world hasn't been domesticated and the animals will still kill you. The fungus will still rot your skin off, kind of thing, or something. So like, not that. Presumably, bullets is not going to protect you from a fungus, but the point is, life is not necessarily. It's not that life is unpleasant. It's that life is not necessarily utopianly pleasant, the way that you would see in other settings such as Star Trek. It's that, hey, there's a frontier. These are frontier worlds, and even some of the core worlds still deal with frontier world problems, especially if they're in former Cathorian space.
Exactly.
So let's see. The next. So given that the vast majority of weapons training comes from all the infrastructure created to train conscripts, which has been built up over literally hundreds of years in the setting. It may well be effectively impossible on a practical level to end conscription within the Glacorian Shogunate without also creating a void in the supply of weapons training. Perhaps at this point, only frontier worlds that are technically self-governing have an opportunity to create all-volunteer forces. This is like any culture, any society that has, for an extended period, relied on a single source for whatever, whether it be training or product. Typically, the infrastructure and mentality has shifted to assume that that's always going to happen. And then when something upsets the status quo, that becomes very scary and dangerous and sometimes extremely destructive, depending on how long a society or culture has grown dependent on maintenance of that status quo. At this point, military conscription, the training that you get from it, and how it's used to prepare people for. I mean, it would be like, let's say everyone relied on, in the United States we have the Boy Scouts. Let's say everyone relied on the Boy Scouts to learn how to go camping, and then suddenly the Boy Scouts didn't exist. Well, there would be a void for a while that would make that damaging, of like, well, nobody learned how to camp for a while, which I know that seems like a small issue, but in a frontier kind of world, that's important.
Well, I can give you an example. Cursive writing. They don't teach that anymore. I didn't learn cursive writing. They actually cancelled it the year before me. Nope, they never taught me how to sign my name. I signed my name really, really badly because they didn't teach me that. And so I can't read cursive writing because I never learned how to write it.
Yep.
So someone hands, like my grandma writes me a letter, she writes it in cursive. I can't read it.
So I was homeschooled, and my parents were like, yeah, you don't need to learn handwriting. But you do need to learn a little bit of cursive. The main thing they focused on was typing. But they did insist that I learn some cursive. Because cursive, and they're right, cursive is basically another language.
Yes.
It's.
Have you seen Russian cursive?
Oh God, I barely understand English cursive. I do understand it, but my God, you want me to understand another language?
I'm gonna send you a picture, and then I'm gonna include it in the podcast.
Oh,
Russian cursive. This is bad. Bad in the sense of illegible to an English reader, because it's a different kind of script.
Yeah.
Oh, that's not. What the hell? What the HE double hockey sticks? There we go. Sorry.
Oh my God. Russian? That is no way.
That's actually that's not a prescription. That's not like a doctor writing badly. That's actual Russian cursive.
Unbelievable.
Okay, so the next question is also related to the mandatory military service, but only peripherally. And the question is, if everyone is allowed to carry their military equipment, what of the gun crime?
So a major detail that is often missed regarding responsible gun ownership is that weapons are a deterrent. Criminals are less likely to approach someone violently if at any time a would-be victim could turn around and, well, blast their cap off real smooth. Citizens don't need to actually be willing to use lethal force to defend against an attacker who wants to steal, say, their handbag, but it's about the known danger preventing the situation from occurring in the first place, and the would-be attacker believing that someone is willing to use lethal force to defend themselves. This is like a porcupine compared to a lion perspective, where the porcupine may lose, but could cause enough damage that the lion, it's not worth it for the lion. There's easier prey. And
yeah, they are not able to survive to get their next meal.
And it, but yeah, that's something that is normally missed. Is if someone thinks, oh, it's safe to attack this person, they're more likely to rely on violence because there's no consequences to it instead of manipulation. So one of the things we talked about in the setting was the clans clans could operate like cartels or mafias. However, the direct violence that they had that wasn't like large-scale unit operations would probably be relatively limited, because it's not just that they and the local government would be armed, it's that even the person walking down the street, while it may be a little strange, I mean, sometimes they'll just walk in armor and like full gear.
Yep.
And it's just like, oh, whatever.
So, I just finished playing Mafia 1 Definitive Edition, and spoilers to anyone who's played the game, you might want to skip ahead like 5 seconds, but the final mission, or the second final mission, is you and one of the other Mafia men go into a bank, you both have a Tommy gun, and you rob the bank. It's just the two of you. And that's because the Joe somebody, the average, there's like 10 people in the bank. None of them have their own firearms. It's just the guards. So 2 guys walk in with these weapons, and nobody else can do anything about it. But you send 2 guys in to a bank where everyone has a pistol on them.
At least a pistol. I mean, like we talked, it'd be okay to just open carry a long arm.
Exactly. But, I mean, you got 2 guys who have to try and keep all 10 of these people within their view at all times. Otherwise, it's over.
Movies don't... modern day, like, Hollywood movies tend to be like... So they don't show... If someone is armed, it's typically only one person in that bank. It shows that the good guy with the gun... say like the loan officer, or that person you talk to get a loan who has a gun, might have a gun under the desk, but then it shows that they get themselves killed or they're impotent or whatever. And it doesn't show what it's like when everyone has one, unless it's in the context of, okay, everyone dies and the place gets just completely demolished. Whereas the reality is people that carried, especially in like this setting, but in any culture where it's normal, there'd be a lot of practice of that, and most likely it wouldn't be that the whole place got shot up, it'd be that the 2 lead sponges got shot up real bad.
Yeah, and you just don't want to go into that environment anyway. So the criminals don't want to go in there.
The typical extortion activities that we think of like gun to your face sort of thing would probably be less likely. Instead, they would we talked about this in another podcast, it would rely more on like those sad puppy dog commercials that they would pull on the heartstrings and scam you out of money. So you could think of mafia activities and modern day cartels and mafias do this, especially like I think it's out of Malaysia. There's a lot of China-backed call centers, quote-unquote call centers, that rely on scamming the elderly and other people out of their funds. And so that would be more like their revenue generation. Or the cartels in Mexico that have muscled their way into the oil, Mexican oil, so that they don't have to rely on drug sales.
Yes.
Setting themselves up as a parallel government to the Mexican government.
So actually, with that mentioned, the last, I guess, general question that we wanted to answer for the setting is, with all of that said, if everyone is forced to bow to the government, quote unquote, and follow its laws in so many areas like mandatory service, wouldn't there be widespread corruption?
So all of the laws that are put in place in the Glacorian Shogunate are designed with leeway for the people to have their say. Anti-narcotic and prohibition laws are perhaps some of the least agreeable among the laws in place, but their purpose is to ensure that a person's choice and say is of sound mind and body. Any other law prioritizes freedom of peoples first and executive powers second.
Of course, that's easy to say, and arguably even the most despotic government would make that claim, but a robust auditing and impeachment process means that almost on a dime, a representative's misanthropic behavior would be swiftly dealt with defensive force if necessary. After all, as previously mentioned, the citizens are armed, they're soldiers, effectively. The role that the functionally, quote-unquote, infinite frontier plays, given humanity has only spread out to a tiny fraction of the galaxy, also applies pressure to corrupt regimes that might spring up to limit their misdeeds, lest too many citizens vote with their feet and relocate to a frontier world. Indeed, those that refuse to be drafted will oftentimes move to a far frontier world that's still wild and self-governed, or most likely not even governed on a planetary scale at all yet. Which is another thing that we're going to address in one of our short stories. More details on those are coming out soon, and those were some of the questions we've had sent to us through our Discord server and on YouTube. A link to the Glacorian Development Discord server is in the description of this video. If you want to come check us out or get involved with the community, it's open to everyone. In addition, we will include a link to our Patreon for those interested in supporting our efforts.
If you have any questions or simply want to follow our progress as we develop media for this universe, please join us on Discord. If you want to support our efforts and can afford it, consider our Patreon. Thank you for listening.
Conscription.